Now that we've done coordinate conversions, let's look at converting equations. So first let's focus on converting a rectangular equation to polar form. And then with this, we're going to replace x with r cosine theta and y with r sine of theta, and then solve for r. So the things that we need to remember on here is remember that x equals r cosine theta. And then we also need to remember that y equals r sine of theta. And let's try this example. Y equals negative x. So y, we know, is r sine of theta. Then we have that equals negative, and then x. X, we know, is r cosine of theta. And so what we want to do is solve for r. So let's go ahead and divide by cosine theta first. So now we have r times sine of theta over cosine theta, and that equals negative r. And then, so let's just divide by r on both sides. And so sine over cosine, I hope you remember that is tangent of theta. And then we have r over r, so that's going to be negative 1. And then so let's take the arctangent because we want theta to be by itself. So theta equals arctangent of negative 1. And so in this case, it leaves it as negative pi over 4. So let's try another example. We have y equals negative 2. So all we're going to do is replace r sine of theta here, and that equals negative 2. So let's divide by sine of theta because we want to isolate the r, right? Solve for r. So we find that r equals negative 2, and sine of theta, that is cosecant of theta. So pretty fast. Okay, letter C, getting a little more complicated. We have 3x plus 5y minus 2. So again, all we're doing is replacing the x with the r cosine theta and the y with the r sine of theta. So let's do that. So this is 3 times r cosine theta plus 5 times r sine of theta minus 2 equals 0. So let me rewrite this. So this is 3r cosine theta plus 5r sine of theta. And let's go ahead and add 2 to both sides just to move that to the other side. So add 2. And then looking at the left side here, notice I have an r and an r. So let's factor that out. So r, and now this becomes 3 cosine theta plus 5 sine of theta equals 2. So to isolate r, we're going to divide by 3 cosine theta plus 5 sine of theta by both sides. And, believe it or not, that is our final answer. R equals 2 over 3 cosine theta plus 5 sine of theta. So don't change anything, just leave this as it is. Letter D. D equals 2 times x times y equals 1. And so first what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to divide by 2, and then we're going to change our x and our y. So this becomes r cosine theta, and the y is r sine of theta, which equals a half. So the r's I can multiply together, and let's go ahead and divide by cosine sine theta, sine of theta. So divided by cosine theta, sine of theta, it's in the denominator here. And so we have our r times r here, so that becomes r squared. So this is r squared as 1 over 2 cosine theta sine of theta, and we just leave it just like that. Don't take the square root or anything like that. So go ahead and try these 2 examples here. So trying this out for letter A, you should have gotten r equals 3 cosecant of theta. For x times y equals 4, very similar to the other problem, you would get r squared equals 4 secant theta cosecant theta. So now let's look at converting from polar to rectangular form. So here it's important to remember again that x squared plus y squared equals r squared, and we need to know that tangent of theta equals y over x. So let's take a look at first r equals 2. So r equals 2, I'm just going to plug it into this equation here. So this is x squared plus y squared equals 2 squared. So this is x squared plus y squared equals 4. And so that would be a circle. Letter B, we have theta equals pi over 3. So I'm going to rewrite it here. Theta equals pi over 3. What I want to do is let's go ahead and take the tangent of both sides. So we have tangent of theta equals tangent of pi over 3. And so when does tangent equal pi? What does tangent of pi over 3 equal? And so tangent of pi over 3, that's going to be root 3 over 2 and a half, right? That's y over x. And now we know that simplifies to square root of 3. Now we also know tangent of theta. What does tangent of theta equal? Remember that tangent of theta equals y over x. So I'm going to change this tangent of theta to y over x. So I have y over x, and then the answer that we got here, which is root 3. And then now, all we have to do is to multiply by both sides by x. So our rectangular equation is y equals square root of 3 times x. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that we're solving these problems. Let's look at r equals secant of theta. So secant of theta, we remember, is 1 over cosine of theta. So I'm going to replace that here. So we have r equals 1 over cosine of theta. And so what we're going to do is multiply both sides by cosine of theta. So now we have r cosine of theta equals 1. And then remember, what does r cosine of theta equal? R cosine of theta equals x. So the answer is x equals 1, and there is our equation. So letter D, we have r equals 6 sine of theta. So this one's a little different than the ones that we've looked at. Notice for sine, I can't convert it just like I did for secant, right? I converted that to cosine, and then I could multiply it, and then it gives me my x value. I can't do that here. So this one's a little different. What we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by r. Because I want this to be a sine, r sine of theta, so if I multiply by r, that'll help me out. So this becomes r squared equals 6r sine of theta. Then, now this r sine of theta, what does that equal? R sine of theta equals y. So now we have r squared equals 6 times y. Now looking at r squared, what does r squared remind us of? R squared reminds us of this equation here. So now we have x squared plus y squared, and that equals 6y. Now let's move everything to the left side. So let's subtract 6y from both sides. When we do that, we're looking at x squared plus y squared minus 6y equals 0. Now the book kind of leaves it like this, but we can actually simplify this a little bit more. And so what we're going to do is we're going to complete this square. So this is x squared plus y squared minus 6y plus a number, and then 0 plus whatever that perfect number is. And so we could add 9 to both sides to complete this square. Remember, that's take negative 6 divided by 2 and square it. So we are left with x squared plus y minus 3 equals 9. Y minus 3 squared equals 9. And that would help us in graphing. So go ahead and try these 3 examples here. All right, so trying these out, the first equation is x squared plus y squared equals 49. For letter B, that is just y equals x. And then letter C, that is y equals 1.